the export of the ideas of empowerment, enfranchisement, participation, of breaking industries up, of allowing competition and new ideas, allowing the public to be part of this process, which took off around the world and lay behind a lot of the spirit of revolution in Eastern Europe, which led to the bringing down of the Berlin Wall. And I think if we want a single picture that I will remember as a result of the Thatcher legacy, it is the tumbling of the Berlin Wall, the realization that the path of enterprise and freedom adopted by all the democratic parties in this House is the right approach, and that tyranny and communism doesn't work. So, Mr. Speaker, a great lady, a great stateswoman, a huge personal achievement, a very big achievement politically, and at its best an achievement which broke free from conservatism, which broke free from party dogma, and showed the world that there is a better way, a democratic way, a freedom-loving way.
Mr. Nick Clegg.
On behalf of the Liberal Democrats, I'd like to pay tribute to Lady Thatcher. We send our sincere condolences to her family and friends, in particular her children Mark and Carol. Like all of us here, Mr. Speaker, who are not members of the Conservative Party, and as someone who disagreed with many of the things she did, I've thought long and hard about what to say. I'm also a Sheffield MP, a city where the mere mention of her name even now elicits strong reactions. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to think she'd perhaps be pleased that she still provokes trepidation and uncertainty amongst leaders of other parties, even when she's not here herself, eyeballing us across the House. Mr. Speaker, that those of us who are not from her party can shun the tenets of Thatcherism and yet still respect Margaret Thatcher is part of what was so remarkable about her. And it is in that spirit that I'd like to make three short observations. First, whether you liked her or disliked her, it is impossible to deny the indelible imprint Margaret Thatcher made both on the nation and the wider world. She was among those very rare leaders who became a towering historical figure, not as written in the history books, but when still in the prime of her political life. Whatever else is said about her, Margaret Thatcher created a paradigm, setting the parameters for economic, political and social debate for decades to come. She drew the lines on a political map that we here are still navigating today. Second, she was one of the most caricatured figures in modern British politics, yet she was easily one of the most complex. On the one hand, she's remembered as the eponymous ideologue, responsible for her own ism. Yet in reality, much of her politics was subtle, pragmatic, sometimes driven by events. Margaret Thatcher was a staunch patriot and much more comfortable reaching out across the Atlantic than across the Channel. Yet she participated in one of the most profound periods of European integration, she herself an architect of the single market. And while she was a conservative to her core, leading a party which traditionally likes to conserve things, she held a deep aversion to the status quo. She was restive about the future, determined to use politics as a force for reform, never fearing short-term disruption in pursuit of long-term change. In many ways a traditionalist, she was one of the most iconoclastic politicians of our age. So Margaret Thatcher was far from the cardboard cutout that is sometimes imagined. And for me, the best tribute to her is not to consign her to a simplified heroine or villain, but to remember her with all the nuance, unresolved complexity and paradox she possessed. Finally, Mr. Speaker, there was an extraordinary, even unsettling directness about her political presence. I remember vividly, aged 20, reading that Margaret Thatcher had said that there was no such thing as society. I was dismayed. It was not the kind of thing that a wide-eyed, idealistic social anthropology undergraduate wanted to hear. But with hindsight, what strikes me is that while I disagreed with the untempered individualism which those words implied, I never for a second thought that she was being cynical, or that she was striking a pose or taking a position for short-term effect. You always knew with Margaret Thatcher that she believed what she said. It is interesting, Mr. Speaker, to reflect on how she would have reacted to today's political culture of 24-hour news, pollsters and focus groups. She seemed blissfully indifferent to the popularity of what she said, entirely driven instead by the conviction of what she said. Somehow her directness made you feel as if she was arguing directly with you, as if it was a clash of her convictions against yours. And as a result, you somehow felt as if you knew her, even if you did not. Whether she inspired or confronted, led or attacked, she did it all with uncluttered clarity. Mr. Speaker, her memory will no doubt continue to divide opinion and stir deep emotion. But as we as a nation say farewell to a figure who loomed so large, one thing's for sure. The memory of her will continue undimmed, strong and clear for years to come, in keeping with the unusual, unique character of Margaret Thatcher herself.
Mr. Nigel Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And may I begin by, on behalf of my right honourable and honourable friends, wishing our deepest sympathies to the family of Baroness Thatcher, to her children and to her grandchildren. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, also for recalling Parliament is the right thing to do in this chamber, which she dominated for so long, that we, the representatives of the people of the United Kingdom, should meet here to pay tribute, but also to reflect on her long period in office. Baroness Thatcher was many things, Mr. Speaker. She was a pioneer, as has been said, the first female leader of a major political party in the United Kingdom, and the first female Prime Minister. She did break that glass ceiling, but she also broke through the social barrier standing in the way of anyone at that time and generation from becoming the leader of a major political party.